All right, Shana Tova. We are now entering into our second day of Rosh Hashanah as the sun begins to set and we turn to the second day of Yom Tov. I always wonder, what do we make of this second day of the holiday? Why do we celebrate for 2 days as opposed to one? I like to think of the second day of Rosh Hashanah as our second chance at this holiday. If we were distracted from prayer and reflection on the first day, we have another chance on the second. On the second day, when we are more familiar with the prayers and the songs, we can have a deeper and more meaningful experience. We gain another chance to make teshuvah, to turn our lives and to take a second chance at what we are hoping to do. The second day, you could say, is a second chance at taking a second chance. We like to think in our lives that when we take a second chance at something, that when we try again, it will be better than the first. If we miss the first basket, then we'll make the basket the second time. We will do better. But what happens when a second chance is less than appealing? What happens when it is option B as opposed to option A? What happens even when a second chance comes not from our own choosing? These days, many life cycle events, graduation ceremonies, and B'nai Mitzvah have been rescheduled or they've been moved online. Our second chance at these events, these make-up events, sometimes don't quite line up with our expectations. They aren't what we hoped and dreamed the big day would be. How do we respond to this situation? As Rabbi Smolkin really beautifully demonstrated this morning and last night, the Jewish people have become experts at making the most of our second chances, at responding to the changes in our lives, making the most of them, allowing them to still feel special and important and holy. And we have demonstrated this even here at our live stream services. We continue to embrace and to cherish the opportunities that we have to gather and to celebrate life, even if it looks different than what we expected. In fact, it is our very capacity to celebrate, to have simcha, joy, that carries our people forward. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs has written really beautifully of that. I'd like to tell you a story this evening. This is a story about one Rosh Hashanah about 2,500 years ago, but the themes of that story resonate so deeply with us today. This story demonstrates the power of joy, the power of simcha, to turn a second chance, to turn option B into something pretty amazing. When the Persian Empire swept over the Middle East, they invited some of the Jewish community to return to the land of Israel. This was their second chance at rebuilding the temple since the first one had been destroyed 70 years earlier. This was a rescheduled worship service in quite a different form than the original one had been. Yes, some of the people were together in person, but there were so many fewer of them present, and the building that they had been accustomed to, the building that they loved, was gone. The people were feeling quite low about themselves and their prospects for the future. Even the prospect of rebuilding the temple seemed a huge hill to overcome. As a result, enter into the picture the leader, the scribe Ezra. Ezra knew the people needed something, so he assembled the entire people of Israel together on the first day of the 7th month, on Rosh Hashanah. And he read to them from our holy Torah scroll. This was, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes, the first national education seminar of the Jewish people, and what a seminar it was. It touched the people so deeply that they began to weep. They heard the mitzvot, they heard the commandments that they were called to do, and they realized the extent of their challenge. They feared they would not be able to live up to the call of God in the Torah. How could they possibly achieve what they were called to do? But Ezra, Nehemiah, who was the governor at the time, and the Levites, they reassured the people. Do not mourn, do not weep. Go, eat good food, drink good drinks, and send portions to those who have none. For today is holy, kadosh, holy to God. Do not be sad, for rejoicing in God will be your strength. What did Ezra and Nehemiah tell the people here? They reminded them that although their return wasn't exactly what they had envisioned, it was something special. It was, in fact, holy. They told the people to make the most of their time together, rejoice, celebrate, have an amazing time, because when the people would do this, Ezra and Nehemiah knew, when the people would rejoice together in God, they would discover the strength to rebuild. They would discover the strength to carry on and to make great things happen. We know this. We know this from our own lives. Think back to when you celebrated a truly wonderful, amazing simcha, a wedding, a bar or bat mitzvah, a birthday party. Think back and remember the joy and the energy, the positive spirit that you brought home with you from that event. You may have even felt inspired to do something good, to continue on in your life and to take action for good. That is the strength that Ezra and Nehemiah are referring to when they say rejoicing in God will be your strength. Serve God with joy, the psalm tells us, because when we do, we are all strengthened to do good. And this is exactly what happens in our story. The people do in fact eat and drink and have a great time. They rejoice in God and in one another. And the next morning, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, this second day of Rosh Hashanah, the people wake up, and they don't wake up with a hangover. Instead, they wake up with renewed energy and with renewed strength to rebuild their lives and to return to God. What do they do that morning, that second morning of Rosh Hashanah? They learn Torah. They gather with Ezra, who again reads from the Torah scroll, and they discover the mitzvah of Sukkot, that most joyous festival when we build the huts, the Sukkot, and live in them. The people proceed to build Sukkot all around the city and the country, on their roof, in their courtyards, everywhere they can find. They quite literally begin to rebuild their land. And Nehemiah notes that this turns out to be the best Sukkot in Israel in quite a long time. In fact, the best celebration of this holiday since the days of Joshua, son of Nun. This was a truly wonderful celebration. The people here managed to transform a paltry second temple into a special, incredible, holy festival that powered the people to rebuild their lives, their temple, and their homeland. How did they do this? It all began when Ezra and Nehemiah told the people to enjoy, savor, and celebrate the moment. Rejoice in God, and you will be strengthened. Joy has an incredible power to sustain and to strengthen us. Simchas are the Red Bull of our people. Ezra and Nehemiah knew that the people had all of the ingredients they needed for a simcha. They had food, they had drinks, and most importantly, they had one another. Now these days, unfortunately, We can't gather together in person as the people Ezra and Nehemiah led. But like Ezra and Nehemiah, we too can gather together and gather strength from communal joy, from simcha. We too can make the most of our option B. And just like Ezra, Nehemiah, and the people discovered strength in rejoicing in God, so too can we. I found the simchas we have celebrated these last numbers of months, the B'nai Mitzvah over Zoom, the baby namings, the brisses, the wonderful Torah Fund event last Sunday, to be so joyful and so sustaining. These events have connected us to one another in a way that even transcends the physical, in a way that binds us in our hearts and in our spirits. We remember that we are part of a larger whole, of a larger community here at Adif Israel, and part of the Jewish people, a community that shares beliefs, values, and traditions that go beyond the physical. Our shared joy gives us strength in knowing that we are not alone, that we are here together and we will make it through together. Like Ezra and Nehemiah and the people they led, we've realized here at Adif Israel that we can have a good time. We can celebrate together in these times. We've celebrated simchas. We've reached out to one another in advance of this holiday, and our classes, our services, our advocacy efforts have picked up at a greater pace. We've enjoyed meals together. I was just remarking with Talia Smolkin about the cake, the delicious cake that we both had last night in our own homes, where we shared that cake together. We know that we can celebrate and we can rejoice together in God, and in so doing we can discover strength that we didn't know we had to build and to rebuild our community. Just like Ezra and Nehemiah worked to rebuild the temple, so too will we work to regather together in person. We will return to our option A. But until then, in Sheryl Sandberg's words from her powerful book on coping with the loss of her husband, we will kick the beep out of option B. We will make the most out of our lives, and we will discover hidden strengths, resilience, and a new perspective on life, like the people 2,500 years ago that Ezra and Nehemiah led, like the Jewish people have always done. We will find strength in our continuing to rejoice and our continuing to celebrate in this new year. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova and Yasher Koach, Rabbi Chaidell.